Michael, what you're dealing with here, Michael, again, we're seeing the drama that's taking place, and we're seeing, again, how they don't want this next generation to truly understand what this country has gone through. And frankly, what this is all about is, again, as Paul Harvey used to say, now the rest of the story. And so
Right.
they've sort of had this other story that has been cute, but wasn't truly factual, and is driving them crazy. There's another side to this.
Yeah, Roland, you know, there's so much going on with this. I was reading articles dealing with this yesterday. I'll be discussing this on the African History Network show this weekend. First of all, to try to do this revisionist history, and I haven't read the 216-page document that came from the Florida State Board of Education, but from what I understand, it includes controversial language like slaves develop skills which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. So when we look at this history, there were at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts that African people had in this country from 1619 to 1865. In the book by James Newton, The Other Slaves, Mechanics, Artisans, and Craftsmen, 1978, documents this, okay? But to try to reframe this history, and it appears like they're trying to make it like it was the norm for slaves who had skills to be able to make money while they're enslaved and benefit themselves, things like this. Yes, you have some instances of this, but this was not the norm, okay? This is not what happened to the majority of them. And, you know, when we talk about this revisionist history, now this does not surprise me at all, because there was a 130-year campaign or so propaganda revisionist history surrounding the Civil War called the Lost Cause. And the Lost Cause rewrote the history of the Civil War. It made the South the heroes, the Confederates the heroes. It made them the victims of the Union. Okay, it said that the Civil War wasn't because of slavery, it's because of secession. It said that the Confederate soldiers were heroes and all different types of things like this. And one of the biggest pieces, maybe in the last 40 years, of that revisionist history would be the TV show The Dukes of Hazzard, either intentionally or unintentionally, because the car that was really the star of the Dukes of Hazzard is called the General Lee, named after General Robert E. Lee, who was a traitor to the Union, the Confederate general from Virginia. And on top of the General Lee car is the Confederate battle flag of Northern Virginia, which is a symbol of the insurrection, okay, which was General Robert E. Lee's regiment, okay? So we have to have a better understanding of history to see these threats coming. And lastly, this is the power that a governor has. And Ron DeSantis, even though he may act stupid, he has a degree in history from Yale University. He may act stupid, but he's not ignorant of history. Okay, so this is the example, another example of why elections have consequences. We have to stop threats like this.
In middle school, these new teaching standards require students to be taught that slavery was beneficial to African Americans because it helped them develop skills. It helped them develop skills, the union said. Now, I want to go to this here. A spokesperson from the Florida Department of Education on Thursday, that was Thursday, July 20th, provided a response to NBC News questions through a statement from Dr. William Allen and Dr. Francis Presley Rice, who are members of Florida's African American History Standards Work Group. Florida's African American History Standards Work Group. The new standards were defended in the statement as, quote, comprehensive and rigorous instruction on African American history. We proudly stand behind these African American history standards, the statement said. Okay, now, quote, the intent of this particular benchmark clarification is to show that some slaves develop highly specialized trades from which they benefited. Okay, from which they benefited. This is factual and well documented. Okay, so then the statement released by these two, okay, who are on the who are members of Florida's African American History Standards Work Group, and it's a statement released by a spokesperson from Florida's Department of Education. It then goes on to list 16 African Americans who they claim benefited from skills they learned during slavery. The statement continued. Some examples include blacksmiths like Ned Cobb, Henry Blair, Lewis Latimer, and John Henry. Okay, shoemakers like James Fortin, Paul Cuffey, and Betty Washington Lewis, fishing and shipping industry workers like Jupiter Heyman, John Chavis, William Whipper, and Crispus Attucks, tailors like Elizabeth Keckley, James Thomas, and Marietta Carter, and teachers like Betty Stockton and Booker T. Washington. End quote. It's disappointing that some detractors would devalue the research from the work group and reduce it to, quote, a few isolated expressions without context, end quote, the statement said. All right. Now, a representative for Governor Ron DeSantis could not be immediately reached for comment on Thursday. Okay, now here's what's something important. So I was looking at, very familiar with Paul Cuffey. Paul Cuffey took African Americans back to Sierra Leone, repatriated back to Sierra Leone. There's an article from the Tampa Bay Times that deals with these claims coming from the Florida Department of Education. Okay. And the name of this article is Benefited from Slavery. Critics say some of the state's examples were never even slaves. Okay. There's no evidence that Paul Cuffey was ever a slave. There's no evidence Paul Cuffey was ever a slave. Read this article here from the Tampa Bay Times. Benefited from slavery. Critics say some of the state's examples were never even slaves. The battle over Florida's new African American history standards grows more heated. All right. So we know Booker T. Washington was a former slave, right? But they go and they talk about responding to the criticism. The department issued a statement Thursday offering 16 examples of historic figures it said fit the description, that they developed highly specialized abilities that helped them later in life is, quote, factual and well documented, the department said. Asked for more information on Friday, the Florida Department of Education cited the colored patriots of the American Revolution, an 1895 book, a book that came out in 1895 by William Cooper Nell, and they cited Encyclopedia of African American History from 1619 to 1895. This was a book that came out in 2006, edited by Paul Finkelman. All right. Now, let's see. Other sources offer conflicting descriptions of the 16 historic figures, and critics came forward to attack the department's claims. Critics came forward to attack the Florida Department of Education's claims. Several critics argued that nearly half the figures highlighted by the state of Florida were never enslaved Africans. Others who did spend time in slavery did not gain their skills from slavery. They gained the skills after slavery. Okay, quote, they just threw out a bunch of names to make it seem like something good came of slavery, said Andrew Spar, president of the Florida Education Association Teachers Union. Quote, the reality of it is the facts don't back up what they are saying, end quote. He mentioned Booker T. Washington included on the state list as an educator. Booker T. Washington was enslaved, but did not gain his skills until after being freed at age 9. Booker T. Washington worked in mines and as a houseboy before entering school, according to Tuskegee University, which Booker T. Washington founded in 1881. Georgetown University postdoctoral fellow Joshua Stein took issue with the state of Florida's use of James Forten and Lewis Latimer as examples. The Florida Department of Education said Lewis Latimer was a blacksmith born in slavery in 1848 and freed in 1852, and James Forten was a shoemaker born into slavery in 1766 who escaped in 1784. Okay, a museum dedicated to Lewis Latimer states that he was born to two self-liberated, formerly enslaved parents. Okay, he was born free. Lewis Latimer was born free. He was born to two self-liberated, formerly enslaved parents. He was self-educated. He worked as an inventor, participating in the development of the telephone and incandescent lighting, among other inventions. Now, the Museum of the American Revolution describes James Forten as a black entrepreneur born to free parents. James Forten was never a slave. James Forten served on privateer ships during the American Revolutionary War, which is 1775 to 1783, and he became a wealthy sailmaker. Not only were they not slaves, Stein wrote on Twitter, they provided professions also, their provided professions also were incorrect. Quote, so you're wrong on both halves, end quote. Other examples is that of Henry Blair. Now, I went to biography. So, I looked at Paul Cuffey and I was familiar with Paul Cuffey already. I was familiar with Henry Blair. Let's look at this quickly. We'll come back to Henry Blair. Let's look at this here on Paul Cuffey, because Paul Cuffey was listed as by the Florida Department of Education as somebody who was a former slave and gained valuable skills during slavery, right? And Paul Cuffey went on to become a wealthy African-American man. This is from blackpast.org. Blackpast.org, we use some of their articles in our class, in the classes I teach. They have 6,000 pages of documents of articles dealing with African history and African American history. Paul Cuffey lived 1759 to 1817. Here's a painting of Paul Cuffey. Okay, Paul Cuffey was born free. Okay, Paul Cuffey wasn't a slave. Paul Cuffey is best known for his work in assisting free blacks who wanted to emigrate to Sierra Leone. Paul Cuffey was born free on Cuttyhunk Island, Massachusetts, near New Bedford, sometime around 1759. The exact date of his birth is unknown. He was the youngest of 10 children. His father, Kofi, 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 also known as Cuffy Slocum, was from the Ashanti Empire in West Africa. Kofi, his father, Kofi was captured and enslaved and brought to New England at the age of 10. Paul Cuffey's mother, Ruth Moses, was a Native American woman. Kofi, Paul Cuffey's father from the Ashanti Empire, was a skilled tradesman who was able to earn his freedom. So like I said, you do have examples of African people who were able to use skills that they acquired, either brought here from Africa or learned here, and use it to make money and acquire and gain their freedom. You do have examples of that, but that was not the norm. That was not the majority of them. Okay, so Kofi died when Paul Cuffey was a teenager. The younger Paul Cuffey refused to use the name Slocum, which his father had been given by his owner, and instead took his father's first name, Kofi, and adjusted and anglicized, I guess, to Cuffey, Kuffe, but it really comes from Kofi, which is West African. Okay, read the rest of this here on Paul Cuffey. Paul Cuffey was never a slave. Henry Blair was never a slave. Lewis Latimer was never a slave. So not only are they pushing a revisionist history, they just making stuff up. They're just making, the Florida Department of Education is just making things up that are easily verifiable. The Florida Department of Education gave the example of Henry Blair. The department listed Henry Blair as a slave who became a blacksmith and an inventor. Biography.com and several other websites state that there is no information indicating that Henry Blair was ever enslaved. He invented a corn planter and a cotton planter, becoming the second African American to earn a U.S. patent. Okay, they're just making stuff up. The department referred to Paul Cuffey, who we just talked about, as a shoemaker and a ship owner born into slavery and escaped to freedom in 1781. According to paulcuffey.org, operated by the Westport Historical Society, Paul Cuffey was born in 1759, okay, to an emancipated slave. Having worked on whaling boats starting at age 14, he established a shipping business in Massachusetts. The statement mentioned John Chavis. They mentioned John Chavis as a fisherman born into slavery, who later was known for his work in teaching. The North Carolina Museum of History states that John Chavis was born into a free black family in North Carolina, fought in the American Revolutionary War, and became an educator. Okay, read the rest of this here. Okay, so we have to take direct action against the Florida Department of Education. But this is an example of how elections have consequences. And I was warning people in 2018 when Andrew Gillum, the African American mayor of Tallahassee, Florida, ran against Ron DeSantis' 2018 gubernatorial election. You had these woke ass black people in Florida, some of them, who said they weren't voting for Andrew Gillum because Andrew Gillum did not have a black agenda. And I said, Ron DeSantis has a black agenda. Ron DeSantis has an anti-black agenda. And an anti-black agenda is worse than not having a quote unquote black agenda. But a black agenda is not what politicians give us. That's what we give politicians that we craft based upon understanding history, economics, law, and politics. We have to understand history to understand how to perceive these threats that are coming so we can stop them. We had the votes to stop Ron DeSantis, but they didn't do it in Florida. He's not going to win the presidency. His campaign is tanking. But this is the type of damage that white supremacists can do in a state. This is the type of damage white supremacists can do in a country. Okay? All right, look. I've got give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast, okay? Join me at our online school because I'm getting ready to do this free question and answer session dealing with the 12-week online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what it didn't teach you in school. We have the link here in the thread of the broadcast. Also visit our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. The information is right here. Running a little behind schedule today, so I worked out before doing this broadcast. I've lost like about 28 pounds since October 17, 2022, working out, and I'm a vegetarian, been a vegetarian 16 years. I just turned 52 June 7th. A lot of people surprised I'm 52 years old. Then today at 2 p.m., we teach class number 4 of our 12-week online course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. You don't have to be in class live. So we have the information here, and it's also in the thread of the broadcast. And we'll post the link here as well for the full course. Okay. So register for this. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills, etc. It takes a lot to run the African History Network. There's a lot of work, takes a lot of resources. Also, you can support us, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, and through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. And when you scroll down the page, so we have information about our radio show, Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the African History Network show. And then our PayPal Cash App information is here. This is our official Cash App account. Click on the link, $ the AHN Show, SHOW. And when you go to it, it'll say Michael and show my picture there. And then we also have the PayPal link. Put together this graphic. This is our official Cash App account, $ TheAHNShow. There are about 5 fake African History Network Cash App accounts out there that use variations of our tag. I'm still trying to get them shut down. I had Cash App open up an investigation, but they are slower than Heinz ketchup. Okay, they are slower than Heinz ketchup. All right, so join us at our online school. Support the African History Network. Hopefully, you learned a lot today. All right. Look, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win Wakanda forever. And join us in class. Class number 4 is today, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Visit our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can register for that there. Okay. Talk to you next time. Peace.